next speaker. We have limited time. Keith Barton is also very famous, like Ike, like other speakers. Thank you so much, Keith. Also, Keith is organizing very nice innovation meetings in European Forum. We had opportunity to join, and we look forward to listening your talk. He will talk about glaucoma surgery, new direction or follow of the heart.
Thanks, Aileen, and we hope you'll be available this year as well for the program. I'm just going to share the screen. So this is, you know, a lot of glaucoma surgery. Glaucoma surgery is changing. For the first time ever, there's some serious innovation. But the problem with glaucoma surgery is that we still have a lot of need that's perhaps not met by the innovation. And I want to highlight some of the breadth of need that's out there as well. So I've got to talk about what we have and what we need. And what we have is, you know, conventional surgery, trabs, tubes, new procedures. You know, why trabs and tubes still around after so long is actually because they still work more effectively than a lot of the new procedures. And the trabeculectomy and bar-valve implant produce good IOP lowering. Case selection and laborious follow-up are critical for success. And a lot of surgeons nowadays just do cataract surgery, actually just wet themselves at the sight of blood and just don't really like anything that involves an awful lot of blood. And on top of that, to be good at this stuff, you need to do a lot. You know, if you were doing 1 or 2 phacos a week, you wouldn't really be a very, very slick phaco surgeon. And it works with these as well, you know, but nobody does 20 bar-valves in a day or 20 trabeculectomies in a day. And that's part of the problem. So new procedures are taking over. There's lots of them. There's a plethora. And I'm going to highlight Schlemm's Canal because that's the most crowded space and the one that's received the most attention. We've got the stenting procedures, which are elegant, minimally invasive, and actually backed up by randomized clinical trial evidence, thanks to the companies and the FDA. We've got the cutting techniques, which often are cheaper, a bit more dramatic in terms of early pressure lowering. Absolutely no randomized clinical trial evidence whatsoever, but they're in that space. And then the ABIC, which is like a dilating procedure, but again, no evidence. I highlight the trial evidence. We know what it is. These are modestly efficacious devices, but again, they're elegant. We have data, and they're not messy. What do we need? Well, we have patients with progressing field loss. We have less advanced disease who need cataract surgery, and we have complicated patients with failed surgery and very high pressures. We've got a wide spectrum of people in glaucoma. You know, cataracts vary as well, but they don't quite vary to this degree. And traditionally, the little video thing's in the way, I can't see what I'm doing. Traditionally, we've had trabeculectomy and cataract surgery and trabeculectomy. And in this group, it worked well. In this group, it was completely inelegant surgical overkill. And in this group, it was totally useless, but we still did it because we didn't have anything else. And now we have MIGS. We've got hydrous, eye stents in one end of the space with good RCT evidence. We have the Zen and microshunt in the other end of the space. The microshunt is coming up with RCT evidence. But we also have patients like this. And the problem with patients like this, you have one opportunity to get it right. You don't, it's not a question of let's try this and let's try that, and the patient didn't want anything minimally invasive. This patient needs to be fixed. This patient needs to be fixed. They're at real danger of sight loss. And the idea of tweaking and twisting and doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that just isn't enough. So we need different solutions for each of these scenarios. We don't need to end up going from doing trabeculectomy in everyone, whether it worked or not, to doing MIGS in everyone, whether it works or not, because that's a paradigm shift that does not serve the broader needs of the community any more than the starting point did. And it's certainly true that things like subconjunctival MIGS are approaching the space of trabeculectomy in those with central visual field loss. We've got the Zen, the ab interno, and the microshunt, the ab externo, but both are easier than doing a trabeculectomy and a little bit less intense. The trouble is that they're still, as far as we can see, not quite as effective as a trab. We still don't have something that gets us down to the level. And this is the top line results of the InFocus study at 1 year. Microshunts achieving pressures of 14 on average, trabs achieving pressures of 11, both on a lot less medication. So they're good pressure reduction, but for your patient where you're still trying to get those magical figures of 7 or 8 or 9 or 10, actually neither achieves it on the average, but the trab still comes a lot closer, which is why a crude, inelegant, laborious operation is still around after 50 years. And this is part of the problem. And the challenge of subconjunctival MIGs, even though they seem to produce better pressures on average than other MIGs, is that they're not quite there enough, and with still limited evidence of efficacy from trials. The Canal procedures are brilliant, probably for the Phaco Plus, as we know already, and that's why in the US they're only licensed for Phaco Plus. But again, with relatively little evidence in this space apart from the stenting procedures, and we really need data right across to really understand the profile rather than just random retrospective case series being produced. And then again, with the complex secondary glaucomas, those failed with very high pressures, where neither MIGs nor trabs are any use. And we have had tubes which are actually fairly crude and haven't really evolved at all in the last 20 years. The Barvelt is still the most effective out there, but it's crude 25-year-old technology performed in high volume by a very small number of surgeons, not accessible to many patients, and the tube's too big for the eye. But actually, things are changing slightly. And this is the pole glaucoma implant from Singapore lined up beside a Barvelt. And the one, you can see the plate's not that different. It's a little narrower, like the Amid ClearPath, so it doesn't quite go under the muscles as much, but it's a smaller tube. The tube portion's not much bigger than a microshunt and a PreserFlow. That's the PreserFlow, that's the pole. And you can see it's getting close in size to a MIGS type device. The top one that you can see up here is the Barvelt, this is the pole, and this is the PreserFlow. So 640 external compared with 467, 300 internal compared with 127 compared with 70. You're getting somewhere in big crude tubes. It's approaching where we hope to be, where we should be going in the long term. So perhaps inspired by MIGS or perhaps not. Even the conventional tubes are becoming a little bit less invasive. And the pole glaucoma implant, which I have been involved in the design of, so I guess I'm a big supporter, is something that I think you're going to hear more of in future. And this is the direction that hopefully, this is a direction that does excite me, because it's something that you can give to patients who have much worse glaucoma where nothing else will work, and that you actually have some chance of controlling the pressure well. So the problem with glaucoma is that it's different clinical problems. There's really, and I've broken it down into 3 simplistic groups, and there really are different answers for each group. And if you're a one-track surgeon, you really shouldn't be dealing with the 3 different groups of patients. You need to be learning more stuff, and not forgetting how to do trabeculectomies, because unfortunately in one area, trabeculectomy still offers the best hope. But what else do we need? And we've touched on this a bit. We need decent large-scale data on glaucoma outcomes. You know, as I mentioned earlier, we have randomized trials on stenting, but nothing on cutting or dilating. Cataract surgery is way ahead, as you guys know already. This is a UK data set from 10 years ago of 55,000 cataract operations. You can drill down to the risk of PCR if you've got a 30-year-old resident who's 5'9" and wearing size 7 shoes, doing a left eye, and a 90-year-old with the pseudo exfoliation. You can drill down almost everything in these, because cataract surgery has got big data together. Glaucoma surgery does not have big data together. We don't really have anything, and we're attempting to address this with the International Glaucoma Surgical Registry, which you can access via any of these 3 portals, and it's been adopted by the European Glaucoma Society. This can offer a free personal audit for individual surgeons, a large data set of international comparison. It can give individual companies with new devices data for regulatory purposes, and ultimately we're looking to to use it for patient-reported outcomes across the spectrum. And this is this is a thing I've been involved in with my partner, who's Nathan Kerr in Australia. And we have 3,000 patients almost on it now, and it is being supported by a research grant from Allergan and we have a lot of interest from other countries. Ophthalmology Futures I've mentioned briefly. If any of you with any of these exciting technologies have anything that you want to share, please apply to present at our next forums, which will be virtual and will be free. There's no charge to present and no charge to attend. So a new direction. Well, there's a huge unmet need in glaucoma patients, and it's not addressed by the huge rush into Schlemm's Canal. That's certainly part of the issue, but it's not the whole thing. Mixed innovation is stimulating research into the more complex area. And thank you very much for your attention. And Ike, thanks for staying on if you're still there.
Keith, thank you very much. I really like your idea of putting up a registry for glaucoma surgery. We have some experience there in the cataract world with the ESC.
You're way ahead of us.
And there's also, in the refractive world, but there's also a couple of learnings in terms of, how accurate, how precise are those data. So what do you think? Should we not go way beyond and saying, let's collect data, for big data challenges like Ashwin is proposing, or does it really have to be on a registry level?
Well, you're absolutely right. The first challenge with data is actually getting doctors to put anything in anything. And if you've got an EMR already, then you're collecting data. But things like the IRIS registry take data from hundreds of EMRs, put them all together. For the individual surgeon, the EMR doesn't produce much of a tailored personal audit report. And for small companies, who want data tracking, the EMR they want to get data from a lot of different centers, perhaps using different EMRs. And it struck me early on that while the UK could produce very good cataract surgery data, it's not going to really produce enough glaucoma surgery data to be at the same scale. Glaucoma surgery is just not common enough. So we had this idea to try. We thought it's easier to internationalize it than and have it web-based, convenient, with a minimum data set, unlike a cumbersome EMR. And ultimately, we will download from EMRs and assimilate EMRs in the future. But at the minute, it's just surgeons.
Yeah. So, do you think the pathway is, in some countries, the cataract registry is actually the insurances force the clinicians to enter data, to reimburse? I think it's in Sweden. I think in Switzerland, you have to report on a regular basis your outcomes. Do you think that's a pathway we should go here, or to? That
was one of the stimuli for me starting this, because our medical director came up to me and said, "I want an audit of all your personal glaucoma surgery, your private glaucoma surgery." So we put together a web-based registry with minimal data entry. Part of the problems, as you know, with firstly, insurances will almost certainly drive this as well. And you could say me being driven by the NHS is the same sort of thing.
Yep.
But it will be useful, and I don't think glaucoma is anywhere near matching cataract in the sophistication of this. And this is one simple way to get much closer. And also to cover the whole spectrum of glaucoma surgery.
I think that might be a wonderful topic, and maybe you can explore this towards the direction of Horizon 2020 program. I know they're launching projects and programs to finance big data collection with even fewer indications and fewer prevalence. And it might be a pathway to collaborate on an industry, university, and on an international level in Europe. So maybe that's a suggestion here.
Well, that would be interesting. Currently, our main this has largely been funded by a research grant from Allergan, and we made it. we made it absolutely free to the surgeons, but ultimately we need commercial drive to make it work, I think.
Right.
Yeah, but
So, Chris?
well, I was going to say, to that point, I think a lot of, because there's so much activity in the startup segment with glaucoma, that could, and a lot of these companies don't know where to start, and they often start with retrospective data or equivalency, which in Europe, as we know with the regulatory changes, is going to make it more difficult to claim equivalency. So to me, something like this, giving access to the startup companies at an earlier stage would enable them to harness and collect better data or generate better data than what's being done to date. Because from my perspective, what we see is often just disastrous retrospective data that can't be used.
Well, we've been doing this, and we've been working with one large company and one small company to actually data track for them for FDA approval at the moment. So I think that's going to be a useful way to drive the registry. But I think we're cheaper and simpler than what in terms of data tracking, what many CROs might offer for companies.
Very fascinating. Yeah. I think. Thank you, Keith, for your insights here, and sharing with us how you see the futures moving towards glaucoma surgery.